there was some news that came out over the 4th of July weekend that was sort of big in the Catholic sphere. We were all waiting last week for His Holiness Pope Francis to make remarks with the historic, monumental overturning of Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs-Jackson case out of the Supreme Court, and there was just pretty much silence and some awkward press release out of his communications department. And then, of course, we all saw Nancy Pelosi appear back at the Vatican and receive Holy Communion, shocking many in the Catholic world. But over the weekend, apparently, His Holiness gave an interview and addressed both of those. What did he say?
So in regard to the Supreme Court ruling, he reiterated something that he had said years ago about, how abortion is like hiring a hitman. And quite honestly, I think that's a very good analogy. But the problem is that he then stopped short of actually congratulating the Supreme Court or congratulating the United States on having achieved this monumentous victory, and just said, well, from a legal standpoint, I'm basically not a lawyer, so I don't really have anything to say about that. Which is, it's like, really? I mean, you certainly have a lot to say about a lot of other things.
Yeah, even the USCCB made a positive statement.
Right, even the USCCB.
So, I mean, it does seem strange. Like, why? Like, you could at least say, hey, this is great. Praise be to God. States can now determine for themselves whether or not that they want to allow abortion in their states. I mean, like, there's almost nothing to lose in this statement.
No, and I don't know. For the Pope to basically just say, well, it's a political matter and I don't have enough political knowledge to say, well, if that's the case, then why do you have such a desire to go to Russia and Ukraine? I mean, this is a conflict between two nations that you probably don't have a whole lot of knowledge of, but you seem to want to insert yourself in that. Why did you want to go to the Congo to talk about various warring factions that are building tension there? You're not a diplomat, so why would you suddenly think that you could go over there and have something to say? He seems to have an awful lot to say about a lot of things, but when it comes to monumentous, I mean, really history-altering events, when it comes to victories from the side of life or the side of good, suddenly he's mute, and it really makes no sense.
Especially when you contrast his silence with statements like abortion is like hiring a hitman. That's a very strong statement, one that we would say we are happy he said. We like the fact that he said that. We applaud him for saying that. But then it doesn't explain the silence on that. If you believe that abortion is like hiring a hitman to assassinate the child in the womb, well, then you should be very happy, regardless of your background in law or legal juridical prudence. I mean, whatever, it's like you should just be happy. But it really is strange. It's very contrasted.
Well, one doesn't have to have a degree in law in order to comment on the overturning of Roe versus Wade.
Right.
Just like one doesn't have to have a degree in biology to determine whether or determine what a woman is.
Depends on who you ask, Michael. I mean, it really just depends on who you ask. It does seem rather crazy, but let's talk about Nancy Pelosi. Of course, we all have been discussing now for weeks the fact that Archbishop Corleone out of San Francisco has barred Nancy from coming to Holy Communion, to presenting herself for Holy Communion in her home diocese, but she lives mostly in the Washington, D.C. area, your neck of the woods, Michael, and continues to receive communion there unencumbered, but also at the Vatican, sending a very strong message to the Catholic world, and he's addressed this in this interview as well.
Yes, he was asked about Nancy Pelosi receiving communion, and he said, when the church loses its pastoral nature, when a bishop loses his pastoral nature, it causes a political problem. That's all I can say. So he threw up his hands and said, that's all I can say about this. Well, that's quite an awful lot to say, really. One has to wonder how pastoral it was to remove a bishop in Portugal from his position just because he was taking a stand and saying that faithful Catholics could have a conscientious objection to receiving the jab.
Oh, you're talking about the guy in Puerto Rico?
Yeah.
Okay, but just recently, He has banned an African priest from public ministry
Right.
because he publicly criticized the Pope. How is that pastoral?
Right. So it's pastoral when it's convenient, and it's not pastoral when it goes against the paradigm. Unfortunately, that seems to be what the message that we're getting here. And to end it with, and that's all I can say. No, there's a lot more you could say, but he's the same Pope that's gone around and said, I have never denied communion to anyone. This is true. You especially people who are not even Catholic, who have come up to receive communion from him. So I don't know. I have a hard time wrapping my head around how one can assume the mantle of the papacy and be such an unmitigated disaster when it comes to truly being a father to your bishops and a shepherd to the flock. He refuses to lead, especially on moral grounds. And then the things that are not moral, things that are political, he has a very strong desire to insert himself and to assert certain ideologies, and it's very disheartening.
Yeah, that seems to be the trend for this papacy for sure. Since the beginning. I have a question though. I'm wondering if you know why Nancy Pelosi was at the Vatican to begin with. I know that some of the stories mentioned that she was there with some other politicians, that they were having a meeting there. I'm just curious if there was any sort of indication that this coincided as a coincidence, or if she was there to make a statement on this. What do you think about that?
The timing is convenient.
It is, isn't it?
I think that it's, we can talk about the timing of it and the convenience of it, but there's really no evidence of any collaborative initiative taking place between the Pope and Nancy Pelosi. Mm-hmm. I know that there are rumors that she actually went over there to complain specifically about Corleone, but again, there's no real evidence or proof of this one way or the other, so it's best not to speculate. I think that really and truly we should just say she was there, she received communion, which was in direct violation of what her bishop had sanctioned.
Now, a lot of people push back and say, hold on a second, Joe. Good grief, the priest who gave her communion might not have recognized her and knew who she was and what the implications were. How would you respond?
That may be true. I don't expect everybody in the church to know and recognize every politician. I certainly don't know and recognize politicians from other countries. But Pope Francis receives from the nuncio all the announcements, all the bans, all the indicators that somebody has been denied communion and is to be continued to be denied communion. He knows all of these things. And he has an obligation to inform his priests and his bishops who are saying mass within his diocese. So this is a failure of leadership.
I was watching Michael Lofton respond to this story over the weekend on his YouTube channel. I thought it was very good, and I would encourage people to check out Michael Lofton's Reason and Theology channel. But he made this interesting point, and I find it to be spot on. The political fallout of endorsing, of teaching, of holding up what the church actually teaches and believes in regards to anything really, abortion, marriage, the dignity of human sexuality, the Holy Eucharist, and the political fallout of that's not our problem. Like, just because there are political ramifications isn't our fault, nor is it our problem or responsibility. Our job is to hold up the teaching, is it not?
Sure. Well, I mean, the very definition of politics is making a decision after you've counted the cost. And I think that, unfortunately, in many ways, Pope Francis does this, but he's also an ideologue. He does things based on an ideology that he adheres to. And he wants to be the Pope of Mercy, but as the Pope of Mercy, he has become one of the most vindictive leaders in the church, where he just smacks down anybody who has any kind of questionable dissent against anything that he says or dictates. And now we're in a situation where we are ruled by the whims of a man as opposed to by the law of the church.
Yeah, I just asked this recent Opus Dei priest out of Africa who's been barred because he wrote an open letter to his father, Pope Francis, and he was smacked down pretty hardcore. Oh, just a couple of minutes left. One of the other issues that got addressed in this interview with Reuters with His Holiness Pope Francis was to address the rumors of his resignation. Turns out, survey says he is not planning to retire. Any reaction there?
I'm not surprised. I mean, whether it's true or not, yeah, I remember once somebody comparing him to saying that he's a Peronist and using the story of Juan Perón, who was being driven to the airport, and the driver said, "Which way do you want to go?" He said, "Signal left, turn right." And if Pope Francis is being honest, then fine, he's not planning on resigning. But his papacy has been filled with this idea of signaling one way and going the other. It's impossible to tell what he thinks or what he actually is trying to accomplish, because he's so inconsistent in the way that he expresses himself.
Yeah, for sure. Lots to pray about. The church is just always seemingly having to figure him out, right? We're always having to interpret what is the truth there, what is the hidden meaning. So let's pray for His Holiness. Let's pray for clarity, greater fidelity to the Holy Mother Church, to her teaching, to her mission to save souls. That is in fact her only mission on this planet. God bless you, Michael Hitchborn from Lepanto Institute. We appreciate your time today, sir.
Thanks so much for having me on, Joe. God bless you.
We'll look forward to having you back soon. All right, coming up after the break, Rudy Carlos will give us more breaking news and stories. And Jason Jones is going to be on to talk about the divided hearts of America. All that coming up next. Don't go anywhere.